Welcome to episode 109 of the Actual Astronomy Podcast. This is our interview with Dr. Stella Kafka, the director of the AAVSO. I'm Chris, and joining me is Shane. We are amateur astronomers who love looking up at the nighttime sky, and this podcast is for anyone else who likes going out under the stars. And today our special guest, as mentioned, is Dr. Stella Kafka, and she is the director of the American Association of the Variable Star Observers. And well, Stella, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and the AAVSO?
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me on this podcast. Let's start with myself because it has a connection with the AAVSO from early on. I was born and raised in Athens, Greece, and I got my bachelor's in physics from there. And then I came in the US to get my PhD in astronomy from Indiana University. So I'm a Hoosier girl, proudly wearing the red and white colors of Hoosier Land, IU Bloomington. The connection here is that even when I was a graduate student, I was using the AAVSO data for my thesis. So in principle, I am a daughter of the AAVSO. My thesis would have been completely different if it wasn't for that organization, for the rich database of individuals who contributed data on all kinds of variable star objects. So I got to appreciate the value of citizen astronomers, backyard observers, individuals whose passion is to look at the night sky, not only for its beauty, but also for its science and wonder what's going on out there, and collect data in order to help us figure out what's going on out there from early on in my career. Now, from there, I did a lot of jumps around. I went to Chile at the Cerro Tololo Inter-American Observatory. I was a fellow there and the site director of a program that was bringing US students to Chile for a summer to do some kind of an internship, work with staff on projects. From there, I was at Caltech at the Spitzer Science Center, where I was working with satellite data on the same objects that my thesis was on, but at different wavelengths. So you get to see the dark side of your favorite stars. Da-da-da-da. I come with sound effects, by the way. So
that's perfect. We don't have the budget for sound effects.
That's great.
Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, yes, they paid me to do that. So, so from there, I got the NASA Astrobiology Institute fellowship. I was at the Carnegie Institution of Washington. And from there, I was working at the American Institute of Physics when this particular position opened up. And what individuals were looking for in their director was a person who had management experience. And I had that in different assignments, but also knew the culture of the organization. As I said, I'm a daughter of the AAVSO. So for me, it was a great fit to actually have the privilege to lead an organization like this, an organization that provided me with so much and give something back to the community. I've been the executive director since 2015, so 6 years now, before coronavirus, BC, you know.
Yeah.
And from there on, it's been an ongoing continuous evolution, both of myself and the AAVSO and myself within the AAVSO. Every single day is different. I'm never bored. And this is something that I really appreciate because I have a very, very short attention span. So the AAVSO is this amazing organization that was founded 110 years ago. So we have an anniversary this year. It was founded at the Harvard Observatory and was sort of part of Harvard Observatory early on. The then director collected a group of amateur astronomers to take data for his projects. And we'll talk about variable stars later, what on earth that data set was. But at some point, because of critical directions and strategical directions changing at the Harvard Observatory, the AAVSO moved out. Actually under the directorship of Mark-Aaron Mayall, who was the first director of the AAVSO, and became its own nonprofit scientific and educational organization that connects professional and amateur astronomers to scientific projects. So the mission of the AAVSO is to enable anyone, anywhere, to participate in scientific discovery through variable star astronomy. So from a small group that started in Cambridge, Massachusetts, right now we're an organization that has members and observers in 50 different countries all over the world. And it's more of a huge collaboration of both professional and non-professional astronomers. So we have professional astronomers as members who are trying to understand some of the craziest and most dynamic and unpredictable objects in the night sky.
Wow, that's very interesting. Stella, one of the like great coincidences of this podcast is, or sorry, more so your timing on the podcast is Chris and I are constantly brainstorming. What should we talk about next week? What's the topic? And I was recently thinking, what haven't we covered on this podcast? Because we've gone across the spectrum of various things, whether it's objects to look at, whether it's the gear that amateurs use. And one thing that really came quickly to my mind is we haven't talked about variable stars. And, part of that, I think, is our lack of experience. Like both Chris and I, Chris has a little more than me, but, other than knowing what a variable star is, I honestly have not spent a lot of time studying them. And, so I think this is fascinating. This is one of the most anticipated podcasts for myself, just to gain a better understanding and learn a little bit more about variable stars. So maybe first question, just for all of our listeners, what is a variable star?
A variable star is a star whose brightness is changing with time within time scales that we can measure. And that brightness change has nothing to do with the Earth's atmosphere, like turbulence or long atmospheric layers or deep atmospheric layers or trees, something like that. It has to do with intrinsic properties of that star. An example, when we're talking about time scales that we can measure, we mean changes that can happen within a night or within a week or within a month, but within a time scale that a human can actually capture those changes in brightness and record them. So what we do with variable stars, in principle, is go outside, take a picture of a star, and actually a star is variable with respect to something else that is not variable, right? So there are a lot of stars in the night sky who more or less are the same, no matter how long you look at them. So we take a picture of our variable star, we take a picture of the other stars as well, the non-variables, we compare them. And based on that variation change, we record the brightness of our variable star every night. And what we see if you record it over time, that it's actually increasing or decreasing in brightness with time in maybe a periodic manner, like a continuous manner, or much more erratic. And this tells us something about the properties of that particular star. Have you ever thought how we derive properties of the fundamental properties in the universe? For example, how do we know how far away stars are from us? So that you have a measure stick and measure tape, and you hold one end, and I go to Proxima Centauri with the other end, and hey, we are 5 meters away. Have you ever wondered, how do we know how old stars are? They don't come with birth certificates. Son, how old are you? Yo, send me your, you figure it out. Have you ever wondered how we know how big stars are? Mm-hmm. All these are derived from variable star properties. So variable stars are everywhere where it comes to understanding fundamental properties of the universe. And that's why it's really important to study them, apart from the fact that, by themselves, they're full of surprises.
Very, very interesting. So Chris and I have a couple of observing buddies that are heavy contributors to the AAVSO. Richard Huziak is one, and then here in Regina, Vance Petru is another. Mm-hmm. And Vance has given some presentations at our local club about the AAVSO and variable star observing. And one of the things, there's a number of things that stand out, but one of the things that was really cool to me or really intriguing is occasionally the AAVSO will send out, I don't know, sort of like a call to action to say, hey, folks, there's a particular variable that we would like to get like an extended light curve of. So astronomers around the globe will kind of coordinate so that there's like a 24-hour capture of the light curve, which is just an awesome use of an organization, but also technology, to accomplish that. Because professional observatories and things like that sometimes can't respond as quickly or prioritize, a call to action like that just at the drop of a hat. So that was a really neat, I guess kind of story or action that the AAVSO was able to coordinate. And I thought that was really good.
We can share lots of stories like that. It's not only the fact that because we have observers all over the world, we can observe an object in principle for 24 hours. It's also the fact that because there are many people involved as a response to a call for observation, when one person's sight is cloudy, somebody else's is clear. So even if you have telescope time within one of these big ones here on Earth, big telescopes on Earth, then what happens when it's cloudy? What happens when there are technical problems? So at some point, we can help professional astronomers do their job. And actually, without the AAVSO data, this type of business would not have been possible. Exactly because those objects, variable stars, change really quickly, you need some kind of a continuous monitoring of their behavior to at least understand some of the basic properties of what you're looking at. Try to understand the phenomenon. And it's actually becoming more and more difficult nowadays to get that continuous coverage, that much telescope time from big observatories. It's, there are not many on the planet. Actually, they're very specialized. They have very specialized equipment. So in principle, if you are to extract a light curve, which is pretty much the recording of a brightness variation of a star with time, we call it light curve. If you are to extract the light curve of a star, you really need dedicated telescope time. And this is extremely difficult to have right now, especially if you want simultaneous observations with a space mission. So, for example, we have a lot of observers who have guaranteed telescope time. They have earned telescope time with the Chandra X-ray Observatory, with the Hubble Space Telescope, but back when Spitzer was up with Spitzer. And they were they're looking at their favorite objects through different wavelengths, different goggles, right? But at the same time, these are variable stars that change. What they need is simultaneous observations from the ground to understand these brightness fluctuations, increases, decreases of the favorite object, and know what it's doing at the time of the specialized X-ray, Hubble, whatever infrared observations. So this is where we come in as AAVSO. So that's why I'm describing our observers as a collaboration. It's not only data collection. We are part of somebody's research project, and we are contributing a very significant and very meaningful component. It's very interesting. Out of all the sciences that I can think of, astronomy is the only one where individuals without a specialized degree can make significant and impactful contributions to science. It's amazing the collective power of AAVSO observers, the passion, the motivation, even the expertise that individuals are bringing in the variable star world, exactly because they do not have an astronomy degree, but they bring skills, they bring knowledge, they bring experience from their own professional preparation to the field of astronomy, making it truly multidisciplinary. It's very rich, it's very satisfying to learn from others. And actually, that is what pushes astronomy forward. So variable stars are really fun to observe because you never know. And at the same time, they're very satisfying, exactly because you contribute. You leave a legacy of data behind you. And that data is pushing science forward. Yes, we do have a lot of times where we're staying up, worrying what's going to happen next about something, because guess what? Most novae tend to go off on the weekends. So for example, last weekend, we had 3 different novae, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, bright stars. And we wanted to alert our community. Nowadays, we're very lucky with social media. If somebody's aware of an object that requires observations, like now, let's capture something that's really fast, right? It's increasing in brightness and then decreasing really fast. We can send a message through our social media to alert individuals to get on the objects as quickly as possible. But it's more of a big international party every time something like that happens. So
I like that reference. Yeah.
Yeah. So I have a quick question. You were talking about having observers all over the world and the collaboration both between those amateurs and professionals all over the world. How many members does the AAVSO have globally?
The AAVSO has 1,500 members. At the same time, we have about 6,000, 7,000 individuals in our roster. So not everybody who has an observer code and contributes data or follows the AAVSO is a member. So we do appreciate memberships simply because they enable us to do the work we're doing. We're a nonprofit organization, so our income is limited. So we would like to encourage you guys. Are you members? Why aren't you members? We'd like to encourage everyone to join us because it really helps. And it actually helps to know that we have people in our corner, right? That people appreciate what we're doing and they want to help us do more of that. But at the same time, it's a group of individuals who are specialized, right? They're interested in a very specific type of stars. The interesting thing with variable star observing is that it's very easy. I mean, people think about, oh my gosh, their scientific data is so difficult to acquire. And the truth is that it's very easy and very forgiving, no matter what kind of equipment you have. One of my very best friends is an astrophotographer. And if you look at her pictures, they are amazing. She's very talented. And she was describing to me how she was doing this kind of work. And just hearing of the hours she would spend outside, the effort to align equipment, keep them focused and keep them tracking the very same point of the sky for hours. And then the hours that were spent on data processing, on very sophisticated software, I really strongly admire her for doing that. It requires patience, it requires intellect, and it requires expertise. Variable star astronomy is way, way easier than that, way easier. It's like you take a picture, you download it on your software, you get the brightness of the star, and voila, you have a point. And it actually can happen even when it's partly a little bit of clouds in the sky, there's a full moon out there. Of course, you're not looking at the moon. And it's you're a little bit out of focus, stuff like that. So I'd like to encourage individuals, even those who are doing astrophotography, and the passion is to bring the beauty and the complexity of the night sky to everybody else and show us what's out there, to try variable star astronomy, even as filler targets, whether waiting for the favorite objects to get high in the sky, just take a couple of fields that have variable stars. Every point matters.
That's really interesting, and it really has me thinking just while we're talking here. I teach an astronomy class, it's a non-credit for fun class. And I have a lot of people who are learning astrophotography. I'm not an astrophotographer, but one of the things that they're often doing as they are working on their equipment to get it working is they're just taking almost like random photos of the night sky as they're making adjustments and doing different things. And those images just end up being throwaways. But this would be the perfect opportunity for individuals just to snap off some quick shots as their test subjects. And then, there you go. You would have some extra data.
Absolutely. And one of the things that the AAVSO does very well is provide educational and training material for individuals who want to learn how to observe with different means. So we have manuals that, from visual observing, you have a pair of binoculars, you can definitely do observations from DSLR, CCD, spectroscopy, if you want to play with diffraction gratings and or spectrographs, we have manuals for that. We have online courses that are very focused on different aspects of variable star observing and software. We have software, actually, our own software for data processing and data analysis. we're giving opportunities to individuals to do their own project if they want to. And we even have a journal. If somebody comes up with a solid outcome of their own research, their own result, they can actually publish it to our journal so that researchers in the future who are working on the same object can use their results to further their own investigation. So if people want to learn how to take variable star data with their gear, they can just use our resources. They're free. They're on our webpage. And also we have a very active peer mentoring program, which actually helps novices to specific observing techniques to get help from more experienced observers and, bounce ideas off of their mentor and kind of improve their technique. That actually worked for me. I tried visual observing some years ago with my binoculars. And I had a mentor who actually guided me a little bit on how to do things. So I want people to see the AAVSO not only as an organization that enables science, but also as an organization that helps individuals improve their skills. Just come to our webpage, aavso.org.
Yeah, that's great. It's nice to know that those resources are available. Mm-hmm. If somebody is wanting to do this and they don't have a camera, mm-hmm. what is that process like? What would a night of variable star observing look like? Either naked eye, binocular, telescope, but basically no camera involved.
So no camera means that the detector is your eyes, mm-hmm. right? So the process is that you decide what kind of objects are appropriate for your site and for your location. So if you're in a dark site versus if you are in a light polluted site, if you have a location that has a clear horizon or the horizon, it's full of trees or stuff, mm-hmm. you can select the objects that are appropriate for you, depending on what kind of binoculars or telescope you have. And actually, we have a targets tool that would allow you to do that, select targets that are visible on your location with a magnitude range that you can approach. And then you got the AAVSO web pages and you print out a finding chart. Pretty much you need to know where your star is in the night sky. Mm-hmm. Also, as I said earlier, a star is variable with respect to another one that is not variable. So you need to compare its brightness with stars that are not variable. And the finding chart actually is pointing out 2 or 3 stars that you can make comparison with your star of interest for every field that you have. So you take your finding chart, you find your star, you look at its brightness and you look at the brightness of the recommended comparison stars, and you pretty much assess how close, which is the closest brightness of these comparison stars that represents your little variable. Remember, it's a variable star, right? You don't know what the brightness is. It might be different a week from the first measurement. So with that, you record the brightness of the closest, you just write it down in a piece of paper, and you also record the time and the date of your observation, right? So here's one point. So you just put it on a graph, and then you can go out 2 weeks later and do the same thing for your star and just keep recording. The first time I did my observations with my binoculars, I selected a long period variable star. I live in Massachusetts. Most of the time there are clouds out there. So I didn't want something that is changing from night to night, because you never know what's going to happen next night, right? So I took 2 measurements 2 weeks apart. And you know something, I'm a professional astronomer. I've used a lot of big telescopes. Big telescopes have digital cameras and they're, looking at faint stuff that are doing crazy things, et cetera, et cetera. Experiencing the brightness change with my eyes was a completely different experience. Mm-hmm. It was more of, oh my gosh, it's really changing. And I saw it. So we are creatures that live by experiences, right? And one of the things that we have been creating for the last year is to actually sit down right next to our friends and family and have dinner around the table as opposed to Zoom, right? As opposed to some kind of a Skype or platform, online platform. We want to experience things, no matter how many documentaries you see on something, like a national park, for example. It's really different when you are in the national park. So no matter how many documentaries and how many graphs you see of a variable star, how many measurements you make from your digital camera, seeing it changing with your own eyes is a completely different experience, almost magic. And it's, if you think what that change represents, right? A star is changing in size, for example. Just imagine a star that is expanding and contracting with time, like a huge star, a big gas ball, doing that in space. If you think of what that change, the brightness change represents, it's mind-blowing. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, I'm glad you mentioned that, Stella, because, that for me personally, and I know a number of our listeners, because they've commented on this, that's one of the big draws to just visual astronomy, right? Is when you're seeing something with your eye, there's such a different connection and experience with that object. And, when you start to think about the distances and the possibilities, between here and there, and just again, like in the case of a variable star, like you just said, the expansion and contraction, it's such a humbling experience that it's almost hard to put words to it as well, as to how I feel when I'm looking at some of these objects. You almost just have to do it.
Yep.
But what I'm always fascinated by is changes, because there's a lot of things that we look at in the night sky that probably won't change during my lifetime or 12 lifetimes after. But when I see movement of solar system objects, that fascinates me. When I'm looking at our own sun through a hydrogen alpha telescope, that fascinates me.
Yes.
So this variable star, variability, the changes, fascinates me. And I'm glad you mentioned the Finder charts that are available on the AAVSO website, because that was always kind of one of my maybe one of my barriers to doing variable star observing was I don't know how to estimate magnitude. When I look at it, like I really enjoy double star observing. I can tell you which one's brighter. That one's always obvious. But I have to look at the star chart or the guide to tell me that, okay, the primary is magnitude 6, the companion is magnitude 11. Okay, I observed it. But without that guide, it would be hard for me to know those magnitudes. And one thing that I've often thought about regarding variable star observing is that would just make me better at magnitude estimates. And the Finder charts available on the site would be ideal for sure. So thank you for sharing that.
Oh, absolutely, Shane. And again, I would like to emphasize that for those who want to get started and they don't know how to do that, that's why the AAVSO is here. We have a very active help desk at headquarters. You can just call and we'll find what's the best way for you to get started. Maybe it's a mentor, maybe you can take a class, an online class, maybe we can send you a couple of manuals, you can try yourself and then seek help. We provide feedback on data. We do a lot of data quality at headquarters. And, I would like with that to emphasize that anyone can make mistakes when it comes to data submissions. There's no correlation, zero, between discrepant data and the experience of the observer. And we can get into that at a different time. But, you want to improve, you want to experience, you want to measure, you want to contribute to science. We are here for you. That's why the AAVSO exists. So, try it. Just do it. Do I sound like a Nike commercial? Just do it.
the new symbol for the AAVSO.
I should call them and get a sponsorship or something. But it's to boldly go. We're explorers. Let's explore our universe. And because we can't go and take a scoop of the sun and figure out what's in there, we can't exactly use a different measuring tape. Again, you holding one end, I'm going to a different star and holding the other end. Yeah. And voila, we know how far away we are. Or we can't measure, masses. Or we do it through our observations. We do it through our eyes, through the data we collect. We're trying to be smart on data analysis and trying to analyze and interpret different signals. And we're all putting little pieces of that humongous puzzle that's called the universe. So I think that this is the only way actually to understand that this complex system that is around us. If we all work together and we all contribute together.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious. I'm really curious about something. So in my regular work, I help with data collection and storage in a scientific study. So I'm really curious to hear, once the observations are made by amateurs and professionals all over the world, how is that data collected? And then how is it stored? And then how is it utilized, and what is it utilized for?
So we have databases for data storage. And so all the data are being submitted to the AAVSO International Database. That is a photometry database. We also have a database about solar data. The sun is a variable star. Don't forget that. So we're really monitoring that. We have a very active group of solar observers who are monitoring sunspots, and they put it in the sunspots database. We started 2 new databases not too long ago. One on exoplanet observing. So we are storing exoplanet transits, and one on spectroscopy. So we are storing spectra. And with that, we are checking almost every single data point that comes into our databases to make sure that the quality of data is what researchers need in order to do their own work. And with that, individuals, professional astronomers, educators, researchers all over the world come to the database and download the data. Now, in order to submit, we request for individuals to get an observer code. It's a unique code of individuals' initials that actually is connected to the data that everybody's taking. We do that for 2 reasons. First, we want to give credit to our observers, and we want professional astronomers who are using the data to give credit to the observers. And the credit comes in terms of acknowledgements, right? In terms of authorship, co-authorship in manuscripts, scientific manuscripts, in terms of continuing collaboration, in terms of communication. And also, this is a way for people to leave a legacy behind. Because, you take data right now, you never know when that data will be used in the future. And we want that part of our observers to be captured in our databases. Can I give you an example of a favorite astro party that happened last year, right when COVID came? My goodness. Remember when Betelgeuse dimmed?
Yes.
And really dimmed?
Yeah.
And really, really dimmed?
Yeah, that was last Christmas. Yeah.
That was last Christmas. The AAVSO had 130 years of observations in our database of Betelgeuse. And the reason why we know that this dimming was special was because nothing like that was recorded in the previous 130 years. So can you imagine the people who took the first 10 years of data and were like, oh, it's a star that is doing something, yay, right? And then 50 years in, oh, it's doing something that is more or less, the 2 different phenomena are happening in there, more or less sort of repeating itself. But they kept observing it because it's a variable star. You never know what it's going to do. So last Christmas, 2 Christmas ago.
2019, Christmas
2019. Thank you, Chris. 2019, when it dimmed, people were like, okay, it's going down. But then it kept going down and really kept going down to the point where from the 7th brightest star in the night sky, it became the 21st brightest star in the night sky. And then people noticed, and by noticing, I mean, you can look at Orion from a big city and realize that Betelgeuse is way fainter than Rigel. You could see it with your own eyes. That's why Betelgeuse was a big deal, because people could actually see it. So we kept
and it really changed. Like, that was amazing because it really changed the look. Like most people, especially people who are even casually interested in astronomy, are going to know what Orion looks like. And it changed the look of a constellation that's been known for thousands of years by many cultures.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's what I mean. We were talking about experiencing something like that, right? You look at it, you're like, it has changed the look and feel. It has changed the night sky.
Yeah.
So, yeah, because of AAVSO observers, actually our observers captured that phenomenon and followed it. Big telescopes on the planet could not observe it. It was too bright.
Yeah.
So because of that, we have a good record of what's happening with Betelgeuse. Professional astronomers, in collaboration with our observers, collected data with Hubble Space Telescope, with X-ray observatories. They tried to do radio as well. There was something weird with the radio antennas. And then Betelgeuse recovered. And we're like, okay, that's one off. It will come back to its normal behavior, right? Well, guess what? This year, Betelgeuse is way, 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 way narrower in the change. So it has not recovered in normal change. It looks like it's not doing anything.
Oh, wow.
So
Very
the light curve
interesting.
is kind of blah. Can I say that in a podcast?
Sure.
It's boring. It's not doing much. So you're like, okay, for a star that has been jumping around for 130 years, suddenly it shows a dimming that is mind-blowing. Now it's doing absolutely nothing. What's going on in there?
Just keep you guessing, I guess.
Well, that's research. We keep working on that, right?
Yeah, very, very interesting. Another thing too that really appeals to me about variable stars is the fact that you can do this from your backyard. Dark skies enable you to observe different variables, but the fact that you can do this just walking out the back door and from a light polluted area is also, I think, a great thing. That's one of the reasons why I really enjoy double stars, is because I can just do that pretty much any night with very little effort. So that's really appealing to me. Now, something that Vance mentioned during one of his presentations was that variable star observers seem to have like their own list of variable stars that they watch over a long period of time. Is this common? And what would if it is common, what would how many stars would a variable star observer sort of keep on their list to frequently come back to and check over and over and over?
Is it common? Maybe. I don't have statistics.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
We have observers whose interests range really vary very much. So we have individuals who have their own observing program. It's what your colleague mentioned, that they follow a number of stars. That number can range from one, they love following this one star, to a list that is like, depending on the equipment, right? There are 50 or 100 stars. And actually, yes, you can do that even if you are a visual observer. We have an observer in Australia, Rob Staubanes. He has a 16-inch telescope, but no detector, and he's covering about 150 to 200 stars a night.
Wow. Yeah, that's incredible.
He's amazing. He's incredible. Visual observations, right? It's not a machine, but he is a machine. Simple. And he has a fantastic data set of stars that he's been submitting at the AAVSO database. So when it comes to our observers, pretty much they can do whatever they want. They can actually have a program of their own and follow those stars continuously in a consistent manner. And anecdotal stories from them, they think that those stars are their best friends. Yeah. So they see it as a meditation / way to decompress. They go after a full busy day, they just go outside with their gear and observe the favorite stars and come back in. We have observers who like being involved in projects. So our alerts, our targets of interest, of immediate interest, they're observers who just get our alerts and start collaborating with professional astronomers on these particular projects. There are observers who just can't be out all night. And let's face it, there are lots of people who have this thing that's called a job and a family. And guess what? They have to actually, they should, right? But, they still want to contribute. So 1 or 2 hours, or even like 20 minutes of being outside and taking data, whatever object is available, is something that they want. As I mentioned, we have a targets tool that provides targets stars that are in need of observations. And you can actually find a star that needs observation anywhere you are. And just take a couple of data points a night. That's great. And we also have a lot of astrophotographers who are looking for filler targets. So they observe a specific type of object before they start, after they end. They just take a couple of variable star fields. So any data is useful, any program is valuable. When people want to contribute, they should. Any way they want and for any star they want. As I said, we have a very loyal group of solar observers. There are people who just don't want to stay up at night, which is perfectly fine.
So I have to ask, talked about a couple different variable stars here. And you talked about making some of your own observations with just with binoculars. So I have to ask, do you have a favorite variable star? And if so, what is that? Or maybe a favorite type of variable star to observe?
Before I started the AAVSO, yes, I did. I studied what we call cataclysmic variables. Novae are some of them. Their stars are very close together. There's a white dwarf that is cannibalizing its companion. It's stellar cannibalism at its best, and all kinds of phenomena happening as a result of that. But after I came at the AAVSO, we get involved in projects. And some of them actually come from our community itself. My favorite star changes from time to time. So Betelgeuse was one of my favorite stars last year. Recently, one of my favorite stars is a long period eclipsing binary that was discovered by the Assassin collaboration. It was a star that was doing nothing for years and then suddenly dropped in brightness, and it really dropped in brightness. And it was a bright star. It's an 8th magnitude star. So we were observing with a group of observers. We had an alert out there. We were observing it both photometrically and spectroscopically. The challenge with that one is that it was a very, very southern hemisphere star. So it was at minus 56 in declination. So most telescopes could not get it. Right. So we were working a lot with our southern hemisphere observers, and it recovered. We didn't even know when it would recover. Just imagine you're observing the eclipsing binary for weeks, and you're like, okay, are we done yet? Are we there yet? What's happening here? And it's recovering right now from the eclipse. So once we collect the data, then we can take a step back and figure out what on earth is eclipsing what, and what the nature of that object is. Ask me next week. You never know. It's going to be novel. Maybe Betelgeuse does something, or maybe one of the bright stars in the sky decides to do something else. That's why I said, my life here at the AAVSO is never boring. There's always something going on in there.
I guess that's the nature of studying stuff that actually, changes quite rapidly in the nighttime sky.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Very, very interesting.
Yeah. Stella, so what I guess maybe at a high level, what causes a star to be variable? I think you mentioned, there's expansion, contraction, there's eclipsing variables. Are there other categories?
Stellar. I mentioned stellar interactions,
Yeah.
where two stars are really very close together. So one is literally eating up the outer layers of its companions, stellar cannibals. They're mergers. Remember gravitational wave progenitors, the variable stars. They're spots, like the sun has sunspots. Many stars have star spots that are a result of their fast rotation and magnetic field. Also, they're disks. Protostars, baby stars, when stars are being born, they have a nice big gaseous core, and they're still absorbing material from their environment, and that kind of the way that they're eating from their environment is causing all kinds of variations in the light curves. There are stars that have exoplanets around them. So as planets are passing in front of the star, stealing a little bit of its light. This is what we call exoplanet transits. There are lots of reasons why stars. Oh, the stars explode, supernovae. Kaboom, die, dead, gone. It's just, stars tend to be very dramatic in their behaviors throughout their lives. So there are many, many reasons why stars vary. And again, because of those reasons, because of their variability, we understand a little bit about how stars evolve, how stars interact, what the effect of those stars is on their environment, how we even form heavy metals, how we form carbon in the universe, carbon that actually comes and finds life, how we form solar systems, stellar systems, planetary systems, and hopefully eventually we'll figure out how we as humans came to be on this little rock around this really boring star, living our best life every day.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Thank you for that.
Yeah, that's really, really nice. There's some interesting history on the AAVSO that I did just want to touch on briefly. You mentioned one of the founders, I think, at Harvard. Were you referring to William Tyler Alcott?
Yes, I was. He was the one. So he was the founder of the AAVSO. The first recorder was Leon Campbell at Harvard as well. So they were both founders of the first group of AAVSOers. They were employees of the Harvard Observatory. And then from there, the person who took over from Leon Campbell as a recorder and then became a first director was Margaret Mile.
Mm-hmm.
After Margaret Mile was Janet Maddy. Janet Maddy actually passed away out of leukemia really suddenly, and one of our own staff members took over as an interim director, Elizabeth Wagen, then was Arnie Hendon, and now it's myself. So we've had for a 110-year-old organization, we had just a handful of directors, which is really interesting.
They've produced some, I got to say, they've produced some very interesting work. Some of them include portions of variable star observing, but William Tyler Alcott and Margaret Male in particular, the field book To the Stars. And then Margaret Male worked on the final publication with Dover on the Webb Celestial Handbooks, which I'm a huge fan of. So quite familiar with Margaret Male's works.
Actually, the cool thing with Margaret Male is that when she got her master's from Radcliffe, because back then you could not get it, women were not accepted in Harvard, right? She spent her senior year and then afterwards some internships with Annie J. Cannon.
Yes.
The Annie Cannon.
Yeah.
And classifying spectra. So actually when Annie Cannon passed away, Margaret Mile finished the atlas that Annie Cannon was working on.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Wow. That's really Annie Jump Cannon. I think they
Yes, Annie J. Cannon. Yes. The Cannon. Yeah.
Yeah. Very cool. Very cool. So what else? We had some other notes in here. Yeah. So, I mean, there's some interesting variable stars. I've done a little bit, like Shane mentioned, I've done a few. The one that I really get interested in was our Corona Borealis, because Corona Borealis is a constellation between Bootes and Hercules, which are prominent sort of springtime constellations right now. And Corona Borealis is sort of a lesser known constellation, but it forms this U shape. And kind of just sort of to the east of center of that is this little star R, and it will brighten up and then it will go back down again. It really changes that whole look of that region of sky, and that's sort of one of the things that I became interested when I just observed just a handful of them, but they're really interesting to watch over the years and months.
The next time you observe it, send us the data.
I really should. I really should. I mean, I never had intended to observe it this long, and I don't really log it. I just, every time I'm out, I like looking at Corona Borealis. There's really not that much else to look at in Corona Borealis, except for our Corona Borealis. So if I had been plotting that all along, I would have had a nice set of curves for the better part of 2.5 decades for you. Unfortunately, I didn't do that.
It's never too late, Chris.
I really should. Yeah.
Yes, you should.
I really should. But maybe, and you mentioned this when we first started chatting today, you talked about some webinars that the AAVSO puts on a monthly basis. Sounds like there's two sets, a how-to series and a research highlight series. Can you talk about those a little bit? They sounded really interesting. I think the listeners would love to hear about them.
Oh, absolutely. They came as a result of COVID, where we were all frustrated not being able to go to star parties and see each other and spend time with each other or have conferences. And we decided to launch our webinar series, online webinars, that feature from research results from the AAVSO by the professional astronomers who use the data, to all kinds of observing sections, what's happening with fun stars, etc. These are happening twice a month, and it's on Saturdays at 2:00 in the afternoon. And you can find information actually on our webpage. So under our community tab, you can see events, and these are webinars there.
And the webpage is aavso.org?
Correct.
Okay,
it's
good.
aavso.org. And also we have what we call how-to hours. This started actually at our conference, our meeting, the annual meeting that we have, as presentations that focus on one specific aspect of variable star observing. Like, for example, how to do visual observing, right? So you have a pair of binoculars, and now what? What are the steps? So these are online as well now, and again, focusing on specific aspects of observing. They happen the first Saturday of every month, and they're still at 2:00 Eastern time. And they cover subjects from, for example, how to do DSLR photography. Okay, you have your DSLR camera, now what?
Mm-hmm.
Last time we talked about how to do spectroscopy on a budget. So you want to do spectra of stars, right? So you might be able to afford the diffraction grading, but you don't want to build the $50,000 observatory. How do you do that?
I do want to build one. I just can't afford to.
Yeah, I know. That's for all of us. Yeah. All of us want to have both our Earth-based and space-based observatory. We could. But, the next one, the first Saturday of May, we're going to cover how to do CCD photometry. Okay, you have a CCD camera. You have two options. Either you just purchased a very expensive paperweight, or you can actually use it. So let's cover the second part. So how do you get started with that? And those give opportunities for experts in the field, which are not professional astronomers necessarily, to discuss different techniques, and for our audience to ask questions. As in, so you mentioned blah, I have this kind of equipment. Is it, do I have to change something? Or is it appropriate for this technique? Or please clarify A, B, or C. So again, they're all free. You can just register for as many as you want and enjoy them to your heart's content. This is an opportunity for us to connect. Remember, social distancing is not social isolation. So come and be part of our community, join the discussion, ask your questions. There's no such thing as a dumb question. Take advantage of these free events because exactly we will put them together for you, for our community, right? To celebrate science, to learn about science, and figure out what's cool and exciting, what's coming out of the AAVSO databases, collaboration, manpower, people power of data. Yeah, and try it yourself.
It's amazing. This is one of those places, and you were referring to this early on as well, where regular people, if we can call ourselves regular people, are able to contribute to science. And, while there's professional astrophysicists that are using this data that's collected by these observers all over the world who belong to your organization, to the AAVSO, that's actually where, regular folks can actually make astrophysical contributions. So, what an amazing organization, and a great opportunity for people who do just consider themselves casual stargazers or amateur astronomers to make a contribution.
Absolutely. And it's, again, it's a collaboration. So we're all learning from each other here. Professional astronomers do learn from our observers as well. And we just exchange ideas, and we exchange expertise. And actually, if you think about it, nowadays, professional astronomy or research is not something that one person does behind closed doors. It's something that it requires collaboration, international, collective activities of people who contribute one piece a person, and you put them all together and you have a good result. So the AAVSO is part of that collaboration, and it's a significant part because we're providing key data There are lots of professional astronomy projects that would not have been possible if it wasn't for the AAVSO, if it wasn't for what you call common people. There's no such thing as a common person. If it wasn't for that amazing group of people who take data.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Well, I'm getting the note from Shane that we have maybe time for one last bit. Shane, did you have a final question to ask?
Not a question, but maybe I would just turn it over to you, Stella. Is there anything you wanted to say that maybe we didn't ask you, or is there any questions you have for us?
The one thing I want to re-emphasize is that astronomy is for all. It's not for an elite of people. It's not for those who spend 50 years in school. Astronomy is a science field that requires help from everybody and is enriched because of the contributions of everyone. So again, I would like to encourage your listeners to join us, try it themselves. And even if they don't want to try it, because, maybe staying up at night and taking measurements of variable stars is not what they want to do, join the conversation. Come and find out what people are discovering. Support citizen science, support an organization that's been around for 110 years and it's pushing science to boldly go where no one has gone before. It's our way of exploring the sky. It's our way of exploring the universe. And it's the only way of exploring the universe. So, and another thing I want to actually say is that astronomy has no borders. One of the things that I value and appreciate from the AAVSO community is that it's a diverse group of individuals from all over the world who respectfully interact and learn together. So if you want to be part of this community, join us.
That's wonderful. And I think that's a great way to end the podcast, Stella. Thank you so much for joining us today. This has been maybe my favorite one that we've recorded so far. And
I think so, yes.
Yeah, you've inspired me. I will be doing some variable star observing, and I'll definitely be looking at a membership into the AAVSO. So thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. As I said, it's a privilege to talk to you guys, and I hope sometime in the near future we get to meet in person.
Thanks again.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and we hope you enjoyed the show. If you are interested in more information, would like to contact us, or if you would like to support the podcast, check out our website, actualastronomy.com.